Perfect. So, hello, bonjour. Mon nom est Lucille Berlinguet-Saumur. I am a director at the Accessibility Standards Canada, as well as the co-lead for CAN's Policy Community of Practice. I am a Métis woman with disabilities. I have brown, long hair, and I'm in my 50s. Today, I'm wearing a black blouse. And I will be your host for today's Can Connect Forum entitled Indigenous Accessibility Perspectives. So thank you very much for joining us today. As we gather virtually today, we recognize that we join this meeting from many lands that are the traditional and ancestral territories of Indigenous nations. These lands are home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities whose cultures, knowledge, and relationships continue to teach us. Being currently in Ottawa, Ontario, I am joining you from the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people. A land acknowledgement is a living statement, one that evolves along our understanding and carries meaning each time it is shared. It is both reflection and commitment. I would like to start by recognizing the rich diversity of Indigenous peoples throughout all of our communities. This land acknowledgement honors not only the First Peoples of the territories where we reside and gather, but also reminds us of the shared responsibility we hold as inhabitants to understand our relationship to the land, its people, and its histories. We also acknowledge and honor Indigenous peoples with disabilities, whose experiences and identities often sit at the intersection of systemic ableism and colonial oppression. Their contributions and their resilience enrich our collective efforts towards reconciliation and inclusion. We commit to fostering accessibility, equity, and respect for diverse ways of being. I would like to recognize that the definition of disability that we work with at CAN does not necessarily resonate with our Indigenous communities. In many Indigenous cultures, differences in physical or mental abilities are often seen as natural aspects of human diversity. Rather than labeling these differences, Indigenous communities tend to emphasize adaptability, individual contributions, and collective care. These worldviews teach us that inclusion is not a checklist. It's a way of life rooted in relationality, community, and shared responsibility that we should all be striving to achieve. In this spirit, today, as we listen, may we commit ourselves to creating spaces that honor diverse worldviews on accessibility and celebrate the unique roles that each person plays in their community. Thank you. I have a few housekeeping items to share with you before we start the conversation. The Canadian Accessibility Network is a national cross-sectoral collaboration, an initiative of the Accessibility Institute at Carleton University, working to advance accessibility for persons with disabilities across Canada. CAN is a bilingual network, but today's event will be delivered in English. For those who prefer French, live digital translation is available, and you can ask your questions in the language of your choice through the chat. ASL is provided, and we importantly have a translator experienced in Oneida sign language speaking for and signing for our panelists today. So thank you for being here. For those of you who use interpretations, attendees can who have requested ASL have been given multi-pin privileges, which lets you pin interpreter videos and keep them visible. We'll also spotlight the active interpreters throughout the event. English captions are also available through Zoom. To enable them, please click the arrow next to the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Full transcripts in English and in French can be accessed through the link posted in the chat. These will open in a browser window. If you have any technical support required, staff are available behind the scenes and you can chat with them through the chat function. To reduce distractions for presenters and audience members, today you will only be able to chat directly with the support team. They will monitor questions and comments. Thank you for your understanding. Now, I would like to welcome our panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Dominique. Dominique, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dominique, my sign name, and I am from Oneida Nation of the Thames, which is in southwestern Ontario. It's near London, Ontario. I am dressed in a purple long-sleeved shirt. I have glasses. The glasses have sort of a dark red frame, and I have my hair pulled back in a bun. A little bit of freezing happening with Dominique's video. Just one moment. So my pronouns are she, her. I live with what is considered a disability being a deaf individual. My primary language that I use is sign language. And we have a bit of freezing again. Please hold on one moment. Froze again. I also I study linguistics. Apologies from the interpreter. There's been some freezing, so we're just going back. So as an individual, I do a lot of linguistic research within my community. I focus on Oneida Sign Language, OSL, and its development. And I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dominique. John, go ahead.
John. My name is John Ward. I'm a professor at the University of Sydney, New South Wales. Presently, I'm on the Canadian side doing some work here. My father's Métis from Northern Ontario. My mother's French-Canadian Algonquin in Gracefield, Quebec, where her family's from. And as a professor at the University of Sydney, I focus on Indigenous disability studies, methodologies, and ways of communicating how different peoples, different Indigenous peoples, tribes, nations, and mobs, how we connect through well-being and through disabilities and look at different ways of communicating and teaching methods. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Next, we have Lexi. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lexi. My Ojibwe name is Little Sky Woman, Kijigokwe. and I come from a First Nation community in Northern Ontario, which is Manitoulin Island. So I'm about an 8-hour drive from Ottawa. I currently reside near Ottawa, though. I'm actually a alumni of Carleton University from 2021. So I'm very excited to be back in my home university. Love the Hearts. I graduated from the Neuroscience and Mental Health program in 2021 with a minor in business. So my focus for the past 5 years has been translating mental health and disability studies to business people, which I then integrated with my own Indigenous culture and background to share the stories and the wisdom as I was fortunate enough to grow up on my community. So I look forward to chatting with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lexi. And last but not least, we have Pitsulala. Can you please introduce yourself, Pitsulala?
Hello, my name is Pitsiulala Laita. I was born and raised in Iqaluit, Nunavut. I am a mother and a grandmother. My parents were the first generation to move into the settlements. They were born and raised on the land. And growing up, we continued to go on the land for about 1 month to 2 months every summer. And then during the winter months, we would go for about a week onto the land. So that continues still with some families, but nowadays it's a lot less. I work for the Nunavut Disabilities Makineswati Society. It's a territory-wide cross-disability organization in Nunavut, and the only one that we know of that advocates and supports people with disabilities. Disabilities in our context, in our worldview is non-existence. We have capabilities, not disabilities. So that's number one. So it's often hard to explain to a person that does not know our worldview or our context when we are speaking of capabilities rather than disabilities. We incorporate Inuit Kauyimayetukangit, which is the Inuit traditional knowledge and societal values in the work that we do. So we do advocacy and awareness for accessibility and, and inclusion across Nunavut. Research and community engagement. When I was talking to you earlier, we go to the communities and we engage with the communities and the organizations as well as the people to understand more what the supports are needed as well as what the issues are, and to also empower communities to take the lead on working in this field. Capacity building and skills development. We do employment. We have employment specialists that are on our team. We have lawyers who fight for and advocate on behalf of people with disabilities. We do a lot of work. Growing up north, it was the best thing to ever happen. And now we are experiencing a lot of issues because the accessibilities in our communities is different than down south. Down south in the provinces, we have concrete where people are able to go out and so on and so forth. Whereas in Nunavut, we only have gravel. So it's hard to get around. We also lack buses, so people with disabilities as well as elders miss opportunities where there is no transportation made available. As Inuit, with our values and our traditional knowledge, we find ways, we adapt, so on and so forth. So I'm very honored to be here and to have been invited. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pitsulala. Thank you all for being present with us today and for sharing your time and your experiences with us. So let's get started with our first discussion question. So how is disability understood and discussed within your Indigenous communities? And we'll start with Dominique on this one.
In regards to the ADA and within our community, it's not completely 100% understood. There can be misunderstandings or misconceptions, especially within the medical system profession. And it trickles down from within that system down into the community within the discussions. And there's not, one quick second for the interpreter, just a little bit of freezing. 1 second. But as a whole, for the community, there is that unity in as a whole within the community, and striving for that understanding and having that same understanding of the worldview with the disability. But have we had a full in-depth, figured out all the areas kind of discussion? No, everybody is still in the process of learning every day, and everybody has a gift that was given to them by the creator to be able to support within their community.
Thank you, Dominic. Thank you. Next, we will go to Pitsulala for a few minutes.
Thank you. That's a really good question, and I'll speak a little bit about it, or a lot. So in Nunavut, disability is understood through a relational, community-based, and holistic lens. So the whole community is involved, rather than solely through a medical or a Western framework. As I was talking earlier, we place the Inuit Inuit traditional knowledge as our foundation. And this is what keeps our communities going. So disability is primarily it's not primarily viewed as an individual impairment, but as part of the natural diversity of the people within the community. So it's a whole community. Everybody has a role to play within the communities. So a person's abilities are seen in the context of their relationships, family, community contributions. So everyone has a role, and we all value everyone's role, regardless of physical or cognitive differences. Again, disability is like the four-letter word. Excuse my imatuk. The focus is on how community supports each member. So we are a very tight-knit community in Nunavut. The communities are very small, often less than 1,000. The smallest one is 140 people, and the normal ones are between 400 to 1,000. And then the capital city has around 8,000 population. So when the community supports one another rather than the individual, this is how we overcome barriers. So we champion each other in areas that we lack, so on and so forth. So when we're talking about the concept of disabilities in the Inuit communities, it's a community issue. It's a family issue. It's an organizational issue. It's all these issues, and we all tackle them together. And through NDMS, we continue to support families through advocacies, through research, through service, through supports. We are very inclusive within the organization. So it's not only Inuit who are in the organizations. We have people of different nations as well as people with other capabilities. So we're very inclusive, and this is because Nunavut has grown to become a very diverse territory. So this is partly how we respond and how we see that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Pitsulala. Lexi, go ahead.
Thank you. So building off of what both, oh my goodness, what both Dominique and Pitsilala said, in my culture, disability is not the same as how we see it in kind of this Western medical model. We don't look at what someone can't do. We look at what they can do, because no one can do everything. You are always going to have strengths, gifts, a purpose for your role in the community. And that's what's important. If you're not good at something, great. Let's find you a role that's best suited for you. You build the community in a way where everyone contributes in the best way possible for them. It's not about comparing people and having these boxes that are predefined that people must fit into. When you follow that model of these predefined boxes, of course you're going to have trouble filling them, because you are now defining what a person must be. And while there are billions of people on the planet, there are not billions of people in the area who can support that role. So for my community, we don't look through a lens of limitation or deficit. We look at, who do we have? What are our people good at? What do they want to do to support the community? And how can we find their place? It's all about working together, rather than giving a predefined, this is your responsibility. And at the same time, we also look at, how much can you contribute? So there are going to be individuals who might not be able to handle an 8-hour job 5 days a week or responsibility. That's okay. We find something that works for them, that doesn't burn them out, that makes them feel valued, because they are still contributing. It doesn't matter that there are other people who are doing more or at longer times. It's just a very different kind of focus on what it means to be a part of the community. We really embrace that we need every single person in that community to work together, to work as a team, to work as a big family, and to lift each other up, to work together, to solve problems that we wouldn't be able to do individually. And what I've learned from the Western world is that our model here is very individualistic. We isolate ourselves and we compare ourselves to others. So really, how we view disability, or how it's understood and discussed, is more of a story of, what is your place in this community? And we have the respect for one another to not question if someone's doing enough or if someone is unable to do something. That judgment is not there. Instead, we're filled with love for one another. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Lexi. I'm going to move to John now, and I'm going to throw in the second question. So the second question is, in what way do colonial frameworks restrict accessibility, and how might Indigenous perspectives reframe them? So John, feel free to answer one, two, or both.
I'll just long as you can hear me well, I'll read at what I have and it'll kind of jive within a little bit of everything.
Okay.
So this is indeed an interesting question, one that I would focus from a settler colonial mindset on how disabilities are often presented and taught through a deficit lens within a medical model. Within education, words, labels, names, and people who learn differently have changed through time. I remember hearing stories of people being called feeble-minded, to the big term when I was a child called retarded, even studies in that area, special learner, etc. Often the word changes, but the meaning stays the same. No matter how we uh, rename these as educational reforms, the legacy and the hurt and the pain remains. Regardless how someone is labeled, there's more to them than just the association. There is the human side, the human spirit. As Chief Phil Jane Jr., a person that I look up to, and I have teachings that I learned from him as an elder of the Dakota and Chickasaw nations, shares that my lived experience gives me time to heal, enables me to build dialogue within a communal understanding that we must heal ourselves before we can heal others. One of his famous teachings that he often gives to students and colleagues is that the hurt of one is a hurt of all, and the healing of one is the healing of all. I'll leave you with this. We must become resilient in oppression, yet be able to open to dialogue so that the real process of healing towards reconciliation can begin. We must move forward from reconciliation, the act of inclusion, to reconciliation, the act of doing. Finally, in reflecting what Chief Phil has shared, we can move on to reclaiming these hurtful words used to oppress so many that we heal and can begin on. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, John. We'll go to Dominic. And while Dominic is getting ready, we can restate the question. In what ways do colonial frameworks restrict accessibility, and how might Indigenous perspectives reframe this? Go ahead, Dominic.
So the colonial accessibility model sometimes is helpful, but at the same time can be isolating because it separates our people from our communities and languages and cultures. But since time immemorial, we already follow our great law of peace. We aim to be together as one mind. I depend on good mind as my guidance to strengthen my culture, identity, and language, which is rooted in our matriarchal society. And one moment for the interpreter, it is freezing. And I think we had some technical errors with Dominique's picture. Oh, there she's joining back 1 second. Which is taught, rooted in our matriarchal society, which is taught by our grandmothers. We understand and we have our gifts for a reason and we have to honor it. And that doesn't mean we don't have anything to contribute. We do have stories, our own art. We have our own gifts that we're able to contribute and to provide. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. Pitsulala, go ahead, please.
Thank you. That's pretty loaded. Colonial frameworks. It's multiple layers of barriers, to say the least, for Inuit, through structural, cultural, systemic. And the Western systems often override or ignore our Inuit worldviews. That's not to say that we're not blending. We're not blending both worldviews when it comes to finding solutions. But finding solutions is not that simple because we're living in two very different worlds, geographically, and in worldviews and in accessibility. So community relationships, traditional approaches to care, these are some of the worldviews that we have. So I'll talk a little bit about how the Western worldview is imposed, and how the colonial system imposes the definition of disability as not being able to, which is totally not our way. It's either medical or deficit-based lens. So this is the colonial worldview, the system, how you're seeing it. So focusing on a person what cannot do rather than the relationships, roles, and the contributions, as I was speaking earlier. And in Inuit understanding is relational and very community oriented. So when community programs and assessments use medicalized criteria, many Inuit that need support are excluded from support because they don't check off the boxes. Because we don't see things in the same worldview. And this is what we need to break down, is to decolonize the system and for the system to recognize and value our worldviews, to learn from us and how we do things in the North, in Nunavut particularly. And the colonial governance system is very Southern centered. It's designed really far from Nunavut. Our system and policies are often designed down here, not from people living up north. So they're missing a lot of things when it comes to how are we going to frame this. Health, education, social supports are often centralized, and they require travel, a lot of paperwork, and access to technology. We're a fly-in community, so we can only access specialized services by going out of our own territory and going into the southern provinces, which can be very traumatic if a person has never been down south, or it re-traumatizes the person that is going down south for support services because they don't want to go. We shouldn't have to travel so far from our home communities, from our home territory, to have supports, to have services. And that is happening today. It's been happening forever because our ways and our medicines have been tarnished through pollution and other things, through assimilation, through many things that were erased. Now we are coming back in full force and saying, this is who we are, this is our land, these are our ways. And DMS is part of that change. So the result, people with disabilities in Nunavut, they don't often receive consistent or culturally relevant supports. Very important to know that. We'd rather be serviced in our home territories rather than having to be sent out. And this is not our reality. We often have to leave our families our loved ones, our community, a place where we are familiar with, into territories where we're not familiar, where everything is strange, for lack of better words. So canola schooling, residential institutions, Southern-led health systems, these all disrupt the relationships, our relational ways of doing things, lack of cultural and linguistic relevance. Most policies, forms, and programs are written in English and French. So we often have to come up with words for words that we don't use, that doesn't exist in our culture. We have started doing, a while ago, we had linguists come to Ottawa to meet a group of linguists to go over some of the terminology that is often used in this line of work. And we are still in the development stages. So Western systems often ignore Inuit Qawimeyutakhanit, our worldview, our traditional knowledge, and our principles. And this emphasizes our collective decision-making and respect for relationships, socioeconomic and geographical inequities, resource extractions, economies. These are centralized Southern power, leaving Inuit regions underfunded in social services or infrastructure. In Nunavut, this means fewer trained professionals, limited assistive technologies, inadequate housing, poor transportation. Historical trauma and distrust, legacy of residential schools, forced relocations, the dog slaughters, to name a few. We have a deep distrust for some of the systems that are currently in place. No matter how much we say we need things to change, these are the results. These are the outcomes. Our ways have worked for years and years, for thousands of years. Let's bring them back. Our organization is definitely pioneering some of the work that is being missed. Policy misalignment with Inuit values. A lot of Western disability policies are focused on individual rights and independence rather than a collective responsibility. So in summary, colonial framework creates barriers for Inuit with disabilities by imposing external definitions, very important, centralized systems, culturally disconnected models of care. These systems often fail to recognize our strength as in Inuit communities, our relations, our worldviews, our collective care, and our adaptabilities. Organizations like NDMS are working to decolonize disability services by reframing them through Inuit Qawimeyutakhanit, our traditional knowledge and our worldviews. I could say a lot more, but I'm going to give space for other people. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Pitsulala. Lexi, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just quickly add something, and it's kind of building right on to what Pitsulala said. In my culture, accessibility is not just about, ramps and paperwork. It's about our relationships, the belonging, and doing stuff for one another. So for us, we reframe accessibility as like a collective responsibility. And we ask, how do we ensure that everyone feels valued, included, and that they're able to contribute in their own way? And what this means, what this looks like in practice, is that we will adapt roles, ceremonies, or even our spaces to meet somebody's needs, and not the other way around. The colonial system says, we have a system and you must adapt to meet our demands. And that is completely backwards for a lot of us. We see it the other way around, because in as Priscilla said, in these northern communities and a lot of places, not just northern communities, people living with disabilities in some of our southern places of Canada as well, they struggle to meet the requirements that the government system puts on them in order to get any type of support, or even to just be seen as a person. And we should be looking at allowing them to do things their way and valuing them instead of forcing them to be someone that they're not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Lexi. You were saying, allow people to be who they are. And I think that resonates with me quite a bit. All of what you guys are saying around kindness and relationship and ability versus disability, kindness, just all of the structural and cultural sort of blending, as opposed to trying to, one up each other or create only one type of way of doing things, has just amazing. So I want to thank you, even just halfway through, for everything that you're saying, because I think that, everybody on the call today can take away from this and can certainly have, like really take a look at how they present as well as how they conduct their business. And there are definitely other ways, and especially around disability. So thank you very much for your kind words. And we will continue. And I know you're getting a lot of love on the screen for your comments, so I really appreciate it. We'll go with question number 3. Can you share examples of Indigenous elders, educators, service providers, or community leaders advancing accessibility today? And I know that's a tough question because you are all exactly who we're talking about here as well. So we're going to ask you, as leaders, as educators, who else in your space is helping advance accessibility today? So we'll start with, let's see, with John this time.
Right. I was talking and realized the mute was on there. So I'm going to be looking at 3 examples, 3 elders that I work closely with, 2 of which are my elders. So the first one I'm going to be looking at is this area is one thing that does come to mind. My first elder is Elder Annie Smith St. George from Kitigan-Zipi, who's Algonquin, and she's been my elder. I've actually been her helper for a while. She's a teacher, a social worker, and she understood that colonial language and policies were used to limit and control Indigenous people, especially the youth, who are the future. She wrote a chapter called The Colonial Education System, Teaching Indigenous Children with Learning Differences, where she shares her son's suicide due to cultural abuse, language learning, labeling, and from day school to government, intergenerational school trauma, racism, and segregation. She goes on to say that she was told by teachers that she had dyslexia. She says because she would say things and write things backwards. And back in the late 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s, writing backwards was also a common term for people with dyslexia, which turns out is not quite the same now. But because the teacher, and the lack of knowledge, and of course being racialized back then as being the only dark child in the classroom, she said she was dyslexic. But in her defense, she was hearing English and writing. So she heard the English, but then she was thinking about it and translating it in her mind in Algonquin. So she would hear it in English and then she would translate it in Algonquin. And this translation, because the language is not quite the same, the language system is not adaptable, and you can't translate it directly. Plus it's a living language. It would appear to be dyslexic. Like when I introduced myself and I said, where I came from, I said, in a way, I would say, like, I am John from the area of. I often don't say that in English. You say, you're John from that, not the area of where you come from. So sometimes it would appear that you'd have dyslexia because the teacher's, oh, well, he's speaking backwards, but it's actually the way you're interpreting it. Some languages you can't exactly translate because you lose the ability to translate it. A second person I look at is Elder Tom Deerhouse, a good friend of mine, an elder from Ganawagi in Quebec, who works as a social worker at, sorry, but my Mohawk is not that good, but it's the Ganawagi Community Services. He recently wrote a chapter called Interpreting Disabilities from a Mohawk Perspective, Elder Guidance When Navigating the Dream World, where he reflects on the influences of colonialism and labeling, understanding disabilities within a two-eyed seeing approach, using traditional Mohawk knowledge as well as teachings of Peacemaker and Atawata. He shares insight on how labels can impact the person, yet the person is not the label. He shares on traditional knowledge that if a child is born with Down syndrome, then that is a gift from the Creator because it brought the parents together. There's a reason why Creator knows it, and also knowing, and I've learned through that if our spirit from Creator, it knows what the body will come. It knows the story that will happen. So for us, the spirit is seen as being pure, as being perfect. So if that spirit goes into a body that will have a challenge, that will have, like myself as a child, a speech impediment, had dyslexia, light sensitivity, mobile challenges, the spirit is pure. Who are we to interpret that the Creator was wrong and the spirit was wrong? The Creator and the spirit chose that body for a purpose, for a reason, to be fulfilled. And that's the way it is. It's the reason who are we to say how it is. Often, and he talks about how often disability is misunderstood. It's a gift from the Creator, and no word or representation from a settler colonial understanding. So there's no words for having a disability. You can learn differently. I've seen learning styles, people who learn differently, but not in a negative way. And last but not least, Auntie Shirley Looms, a descendant of the Gamiwa Roy and the Waka Waka in southern Queensland in Australia. I worked with her, her family very close to mine. Her dedication to the disability movement in Australia is one that keeps on going. So the disability movement in Australia was for all people, for black fellas and for white fellas. So for Indigenous and non-Indigenous, they came together as people with disabilities. But she ended up helping others, including many on different missions or communities or reserves. She shares her insight of the stolen generation, or the 60s scoop in Canada, and how the mobs, nations, must lead in education to help all members. She often speaks about her own son's struggle, that he knows no discrimination, hatred, injustice, and other negative colonial words, as he sees the world through his perspective, his own innocence, and he sees as everybody has a challenge. We're all children of creation, of Creator. The lessons shared from my elder Annie and Tom and Auntie Shirley give a sense of understanding that Indigenous knowledge can reshape how we see the world through our own perspectives, oral histories, stories, and even with yarning circles, and how this knowledge can help so many, Indigenous or non-Indigenous, the voiceless, victimized, jailed, homeless, abused, and even those who have passed on to the spirit world. All three share that we must be our own advocates, and not just for today, or for tomorrow, or for the next generation. As the struggles of today will have to succeed for tomorrow and following the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, John. We'll go to Lexi next.
Yeah, so for me, when I heard this question, what I immediately thought of was the people on the communities, in the communities, who are trying to navigate this double world of translating the Western medical world and this paperwork and the battles that it takes to be heard and understood by the government and doing that work for their community members. It's incredibly difficult to walk two worlds. And so it's not a name specifically, but there is a lot of work that is done in every single community just so that the people of that community can have a fighting chance and possibly be heard. And the work that Pitsilala does is exactly that. It's being the voice of the people and standing up to the Western world and saying, "Hey, we're important too, and we're trying." Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaking of Pitsulala, we'll go there next, and then we'll go to Dominic. And just a reminder that the question is, can you share examples of Indigenous elders, educators, service providers, or community leaders advancing accessibility today? And we have one right here. Pitsulala, go ahead.
Thank you. A lot of our elders are now very much involved in leading discussions to our communities. We look up to them and they are very, very well respected. So we look up to our elders and they often inform us of the old ways of how we used to do things, of how things were, and how, we learn through our mistakes, so on and so forth, and our environment. So environment is not only about the land and the air that we breathe, it's the environment that is around us, our systems, our policies. These create our environment. So we often have people who are challenging policies, service providers who are providing services in our own languages, which is amazing because we often thought that, because we're told disability is a medical issue and that only professionals in the medical field can deal with it. No, that's not the case. We are a community and we have very capable people. So our elders teach us and bring us back to our teachings, so on and so forth. For example, my mother taught me that, there are certain plants from the land that can help with certain conditions in our body, in our physical body, or in our minds. We also have a lot more young people that are that are going into the medical field, that are becoming doctors and who are becoming pathologists. And their worldview is that of which we are Indigenous worldviews, Inuit worldviews. So that is definitely something that we really, really are proud of, is our youth that are taking a leadership role. And because sometimes the only way to access systemic work, for lack of better words, is you need to be able to have a degree to become a social worker if you want to be able to work the system. Okay, so a lot of our young people are now getting educated in those fields, in the medical fields, so that they're bringing back our Western, oh God, our Indigenous worldviews, which is amazing. Our service providers are listening. They're listening, but it's the higher ups that still need to be convinced. So it's still a battle. So yeah, there's a lot of work, good work coming out. NDMS is definitely doing a lot of work in their leadership role when dealing with this issue. And I highly commend our young people for stepping up to the plate and for acknowledging all the things that have contributed to the intergenerational trauma and how they are cutting that by arming themselves with and how to work the systems, how to access the systems within the Western worldviews. Thank you.
Thank you, Pitsulala. It shows that everyone has a role. I appreciate that. Dominic, please go ahead.
Within our community, our elders are engaging to learn Oneida Sign Language. They believe that it is important part of communication, full understanding and connection through the language. And our women are deeply connected through expression in sign language. With through our cultural traditions. And that's because it's important for our body language to be connected, and we teach our bodies, and it's in regards to the wholeness and being connected. And so that's something I've learned through my workshops, is that this approach is a healing process for us as well as we're going through the process with the community. And some of the people involved are in various professions like teachers, community workers. And this all the teachings are all connected from our creation story, and that we take and learn from them. Thank you.
Wonderful, Dominic. I think we could probably sit and listen to the stories all day long. We will continue though with our last fourth question before we go to the group. So how can settlers living and working on Turtle Island better center and amplify Indigenous leaders' work in accessibility? So we'll maybe start with Pitsulala this time.
By hiring us, by respecting our culture, our ways, by learning who we are before they come to our lands, to our homes, communities. They need to acknowledge who we are. They need to acknowledge what land they're walking on. They need to acknowledge the past historical wrongdoings that have been forced upon us. Our people, they need to acknowledge that we are resilient and that we are more than our traumas. We are very strong peoples. We are very resilient. Those who are coming to our lands, to our organizations, we need them to be respectful of our elders and our ways and our teachings. We can't just bring people in because they're popular on Facebook or anything like that. We need to make sure that we are bringing people with lived experiences as well as experiences within this context. We need to really, really make sure that our lands are not going to be stolen more than they are today, that we are not going to be walked all over on, that genocide stops. And genocide is not only about killing, it's killing our culture. It's not practicing our culture. It's not respecting our culture and our traditions. That is part of genocide, because genocide is not only about killing, it's about erasing our culture and our traditions. And when they don't acknowledge it and when they don't respect our ways, they are committing genocide. Every single day, we have to be very careful of who we are letting into our communities, into our lives, because we cannot allow people to work with the vulnerable if they are going to have this framework. Thank you.
Wonderfully put, Pitsulala. Thank you so much for that. Much appreciated. Dominic, we'll go to you.
What came to mind with this question, I'll keep it brief, is that we are here to reclaim our identities and narratives from our worldview and our experiences. As long as everybody here who's involved in here is, as long as you can show that you redefine values to match our values that have been passed on through traditions and through time from our ancestors.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dominic. Lexi, go ahead.
Okay. For me, I like to acknowledge that in back home, it's not about, the professional credentials or the titles or the labels that we are given in the Western world. Those are superficial in a sense that you have wisdom, you have gifts, you use that information for the betterment of all. It's not about flaunting about yourself and saying that I am more professional or built up or better than you because I have the title. We have ways of teaching each other and learning from one another, learning from the land, keeping our traditions. And that's what's important to us. And so oftentimes we have these groups that go and interact with our people and they say, well, we're the experts. We're here to listen to you and interpret your stories. And then we will bring that information back and decide how to best move forward. But a lot of these people have zero understanding of the rest of the culture, and trying to bring them up to speed on the dozens of needs of the people. And that's only one community. They're not talking to the other communities. They're singling out one group. It's, if you really want to get to the heart of accessibility, not only accessibility, like Indigenous work as a whole, it really is getting the people involved who have the wisdom and valuing their voice. There's a way to check box, say, yep, we talked to them, we did our job, and now we're going to make the decisions. But that's not going to actually get us anywhere. It really is a change in view and how we look at the world, how we want to interact. And that's a much bigger problem that can't be solved in, a few meetings. It's going to take a lot of work. But on a personal level, when you interact with someone, Indigenous or not, someone with a disability or not, view them as a person. Look at who they are. Look for their spirit. And just accept that. Don't look for, what's wrong. Don't ask for labels necessarily. If they're comfortable with labels, great. That's their comfort. But if they're not, it's not important. They don't need these titles and these markings to say who they are. Their spirit knows who they are. They know who they are. Just love them for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lexi. Appreciate that. John, go ahead.
Try to make this short, but what Lexi talked about I'm a professor, I'm an academic, I have a PhD in education. But had I chose to do education from my settler perspective, I would have been done half the time. But I ended up doing it from a two-eyed scene. I did it from both asking elders how they understood the disability, and I went to communities and I went with my elders and I asked them, how do you understand disability? And one thing I've noticed is that they all said kind of the same thing. It wasn't in their language, it was a gift from the creator. So there's a lot of similarity. And as my master's supervisor, George Siwi of the Huron-Wendat Nation, he said that, before colonialism, there was no women's abuse, there was no war, there was no child abuse, there was no abuse at all. There was no, there was challenges, cold winters, but there was no good or bad Indigenous people. There was just Indigenous people, and we were here. And not until recently is Indigenous knowledge taken into consideration to the environment, forest fires in Australia and Western Canada, Indigenous disability knowledge, even within the area of disability studies. I believe it was Bell in 2007, 2006, said that it should be white studies because it excludes everybody else. So the area I work in with John Gilroy, who's a UN man of Indigenous disabilities in Australia, is something that we connect as something international. And he often, the way what Alexi would point, and she's met him before, is that he would say about researchers, especially non-Indigenous researchers, they like to flock in, get the resources, talk to the people, but once the money dries out, they flock out. Now, being a black fella, he says it a bit more colorful metaphors. And of course, I can't say it in here, it's very academic. So, and as my elder said, John, now that you have a PhD, you can use your title, you can push it in areas that you do. But when I'm in community and I work in sharing and yarning circles, I always come in as my name is John, and I'm a knowledge seeker. I'm there to seek knowledge. The only time someone says doctor, which I find kind of awkward, I still used to it, not getting used to myself, is when I'm at a conference, doctor so-and-so, doctor so-and-so. I feel like I'm at a clinic and there's many doctors here and nobody seems to can resolve anything. I said, you don't need a doctor. You can have an elder who's got, my elder's got 60, 70 years of experience of marching in Washington at the American Indian movement with Martin Luther King and being in areas that never happened before. And that rich knowledge, we need to bring that forward. And how you see disabilities or learning differences or even learning styles is understood and taught. There's literature that supports Indigenous viewpoints, teaching styles that encourage natural learning. And these can inspire the development and encourage strength through natural abilities. I remember seeing reports and talking about and seeing stories that they had northern Inuit who showed that they had superior visual spatial abilities. They had areas that were superior, and this was documents from the 1960s. Had I just changed a few words, instead of saying 1960 and I put down 2025, people would say, wow, this is amazing. Where'd you get this from? But it was buried. Why was it buried? Because being Indigenous and saying that you're superior to colonial education wouldn't be unheard of. So it's buried. And I found that, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And I brought that to different communities. And one that I know from who's a Nook is a friend of mine, Noah Papsy, and he's blind, and he's been doing advocacy for blind for people who are blind up north for most of his life. And he actually wrote a chapter in a book that I did last year with Lexi, and he's amazing. He's got that rich knowledge, and the knowledge that we have, people can learn that. You go to friendship centers, meeting with elders, knowledge keepers, grandmothers, and other community members in urban centers. They're there to teach about Indigenous people, but also their strengths about it, not necessarily the weaknesses. You got to look at the person beyond the person. I knew somebody whose name was Dave, and he was in a wheelchair. Yes, Dave was in a wheelchair. He had diabetes and he's missing a leg, but it's still Dave. He still has an amazing memory. He's got knowledge that spans a lifetime. So how you take those associations and those groupings and you connect to provide guidance through the understanding that we are all connected, and dialogue through engagement enable understanding that we can help non-Indigenous teachers, parents, anyone who seeks out these knowledge systems and to help advocate for accessibility. I've seen this through cultural language accommodations. If you take, for instance, dyslexia is difficulty of writing. Now, I'm sure there's a Latin area. I think it's the difficulty of lexia. I don't speak Latin. It's not my language. But you have dyslexia, and you have what it is for a government form. But if you have somebody who's Indigenous, Algonquin, Cree, or Mohawk, and you have their language, what the equivalent of it is, they can be proud and say, oh, this is what my language says it is. So they approve it. And this is what the government approves it. So if they need to provide accommodations at schools and universities, colleges, and post-secondary training to get funding for accommodations, because to say you have a disability is a form of being recolonized. I have some people who have to learn French as a second language, but nobody says you got to learn Algonquin as a second language. Well, one of my elders, Elder Annie Smith St. George, she said that she went to a university. I won't name the university because I don't want to get in trouble, but she went there and there was all these presidents and chancellors and deans and people with all their fancy degrees and fancy paperwork. And she was going there talking, and one person got up and says, you know, a lot of Indigenous people have disabilities. And she's feisty as an elder is, you know, they've been there, the ups and downs. She's only about 90 pounds, but she wants to go, she'll attack like a jackrabbit. She'll just spring right into action there. And she went out and she said, yes, a lot of Indigenous people have disabilities. A lot of Canadians have disabilities. She said, if I take all you and I put you in an immersion Algonquin, we'll bring you to the reserve and you'll take Algonquin for 6 months. It's a living language. You got to live it. You got to be in the community. You got to wake up with it. You got to live it and breathe and eat it. Take that for 6 months. One of you who has a great talent for learning languages might have a basic conversation. The rest of you would all be dyslexic. Why? Because they have a difficulty with language. So I'm naming you all. Now, she's not a psychologist, but she said that. And she said, why not? I could put names too, and I could say it. She said, it's a very easy language. We don't have these red letter words. It's an action-based language. It's actually easier than English. But we're not taking that knowledge and information. And I think it's something that we have to understand that there's strengths in everything. When settlers came here, it's like, oh, wait, we found you. And one thing my dad used to drive him crazy. He said, you can never find something that was never lost. And you can't find something that was never lost. It makes sense, obviously. So through this knowledge systems, a wealth of knowledge is out there, and people are really in talk. And it's not just for Indigenous people. We can help for non-Indigenous people because we don't have to put you in a negative. How many people have committed? I've known people there were kids and teens who committed suicide because they were told that they weren't good enough. We don't have to condemn. We're supposed to nurture. Education in schools are supposed to nurture people, not condemn them, and we're supposed to help them there. Every child learns. I see a child learning it. They might do something wrong. You don't get mad. You say, okay, no, don't do it this way. We do it this way. It's a teaching moment, like an elder. Elders teach us. We learn. I'm still learning. I got a PhD in education. I got publications, but I'm still a knowledge seeker. I still see my elders. I haven't seen them in a while. They actually reached out to me and they say, hey, I haven't seen you. It's been over 3 months. I usually see them every so often, but I've been really busy. But they know I'm busy. But I'll go and see with them, have a cup of coffee. They might say a story the same way or a different way, but they'll say it, and it's a teaching moment. And I'll hear stuff that you won't get in textbooks, and a lot about disability and understanding. And through their understanding, they made me to the person I am today. Miigwech.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that, John. Much appreciated. So now it's your turn. If you have questions or comments for the panelists, please type them in the chat. And we have our first question, and it's from Angelo. And Angelo is going to come on and ask the question live. Go ahead, Angelo.
Hi, everybody. My name is Angelo, and I rely on the closed captioning, so thank you very much for that. And I had a question. It's very hard for me to pronounce words, so I wrote things down. And, I want to say I'm also from Northern Ontario, so I know where Manitoulin Island is. I was born in Elliott Lake, Ontario, and it's not very far from Manitoulin Island. I currently live in Toronto, and I'm a teacher. And I wanted to ask Pitsulala, did I say that right? Or someone can help me. I really appreciated what you said about, how in your community, about, how the focus is on capabilities and how everyone works together and contributes to the community. And so, as a special education teacher and someone living with a disability, I often think about how those values and the mindset that you shared, could change our systems all across Canada. And so we know that statistically that, people with disabilities, through all intersectionalities, face high unemployment, and many barriers to employment. So I was just wondering, how can schools or educational programs or community programs use perhaps the Inuit understanding of capabilities and not disabilities to help our, young people with disabilities find a purpose, employment, and, move on to leadership roles, maybe to have perhaps bring that Inuit perspective. Go ahead.
Thank you for that question. As for the education, we use the Alberta curriculum, if I'm still correct. So we don't have our own curriculum in Nunavut. We have to use a southern-based curriculum. However, the government of Nunavut is always. Diane, do they still teach Inuktitut in the kindergarten to grade 3? Okay, so we teach our young ones from kindergarten to grade 3 only in Inuktitut. So we educate them only in Inuktitut in their developmental years. And then after the grade 3rd, then they learn in English, okay? They learn both. Sorry. Yeah, from K to 12. So we use both languages. For the employment, we have an employment specialist in our organization that works with people with disabilities and recognizes their capabilities. And through programs at NDMS, because it is Nunavut territory-wide, we go to each of the 3 regions to inform policymakers, to inform organizations, to inform service providers of how we can do things rather than how we can overcome barriers and challenges when we are advocating on behalf of people living with a disability and focusing on their capabilities. In Inuit communities, we see a lot of areas for improvement, and definitely education is one of them. That being said, our elders are our greatest teachers. A lot of the people that have advocated for disabilities are pioneers in the work that is being done in Nunavut. I speak to Nunavut because that's who I am representing at the moment. So we have definitely raised the bar in terms of keeping our culture alive within these institutions by using our language as our language of instruction. I can't say for all other communities, but I do know that in the smaller communities, this is the reality, is that we have Inuit teachers, we have Inuit educators that are teaching in both languages. And we start with the very young because we start from home, and then we go into the homes, and we want to make sure that, the foundation is laid that we have built at that foundation so that we continue to keep our traditions alive. And part of keeping our traditions alive is our language. Our language is super important. It is who we are. It is our identity. That's not to say people who don't speak it are less than, because we have many who do not speak Inuktitut for a number of reasons that I spoke of earlier. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Angelo, for that question. And thank you very much, Pitsulala, for having a wonderful answer. I'm going to be sending it over to Shara in just a moment to say the thank yous, because unfortunately our time is up. However, before I send it over to Shara, I just want to say what an honor it's been to meet all of you and to work with you today. The information that you've provided has been phenomenal. And I can't thank you enough for having been here and pouring.
I think Lucille is frozen there. Lucille. Right at the end.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Lucille. Keep going.
I don't know where I ended.
You had just said thank you for just the wonderful information and
Yes, I was just saying it's been an absolute honor for me to have moderated this session, and I can't thank you enough. I have so many notes, so many ideas for CAN. I hope you guys will stay involved with CAN. We could certainly use some of the teachings that you've provided with us today in our work. So I'll move it over to Shara now for the official thank yous, but thank you for being here today. It was an absolute honor.
thank you, Lucille. On behalf of the Canadian Accessibility Network, we just want to say thank you so much for this really meaningful forum discussion. The information that everybody gave was so vital and timely, and thank you very much. I think that we could have forums like this weekly. There's so much learning that we all need. And Pitsulala, you really actually summarized sort of what my intention was putting this together, was that to get everybody more opportunities and to keep the conversations going. So we really hope that you as audience will be able to continue your conversations with these very wise panelists and keep hiring them for new engagements and continue this work. So I would like to really thank all the panelists, Pitsulala, Dominique, John, Lexi, and all of the audience for being here today. I'd like to thank Lucille for being such a wonderful moderator, our interpreters, Amanda, Seraphin, and our captioner, Laura. Thank you for the tech support behind the scenes, Ken and Solana from the office. And thank you to Carleton University for allowing us to run this forum today. We hope to continue the conversations with all of you. If you'd like to get involved with CAN as a collaborating organization or an individual, you can feel free to visit our website, and the website is in the chat there. And you can reach out to us at the national office. Also, we have an event feedback form. We'd love to provide feedback to the panelists, and this helps us to better inform our future forums. And our next CAN Connect forum will take place on Tuesday, January 27th, and we're focusing on case studies and accessibility in accessible sport, from participation to leadership. And we have some fine panelists coming to that. So if you have an interest in sports, or if you're a coach, but sports, inclusive sports can relate to everything in terms of skill sets. So we do hope to see you there. And again, just very grateful to the panelists. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. Miigwech.